His smile was inviting, and my heart was already racing. Derek leaned casually against the wall, his voice low and confident. "You're doing great, Ashley, but I think you've hit a plateau. If you're up for it, I could design a more intense program just for you. One-on-one sessions. Maybe even after hours when it's quieter." I hesitated, feeling the weight behind his words. This wasn't just about workouts, and we both knew it. Yet instead of saying no, I nodded. "Sure, that sounds helpful." That night, his voice replayed in my mind. The way he had looked at me lingered like a shadow I couldn't shake. I told myself I was imagining things, that it was harmless. But deep down, I knew I was already dancing with fire. The following week, Derek and I started private sessions. At first, everything seemed professional. He corrected my form, adjusted my posture. But gradually, the lines blurred. His hand lingered on my arm a little too long. He stood closer than necessary. His compliments shifted no longer about strength or progress, but about me. "You've got such natural strength, Ashley," he murmured one evening. His voice dipped lower. "And you're beautiful. You know that, right?" I laughed nervously, brushing it off. But inside, his words filled a void I hadn't realized was so deep. Matt used to say those things. Now, silence had replaced them. At home, life with Matt was routine. He was tired, distracted, buried in work. I tried to spark something to reach him, but it felt like chasing smoke. I wanted to tell him how I felt, but the words never made it past my lips. Then came the text. "Derek, great work today. You're making amazing progress. Want to grab coffee sometime?" My treat. I stared at the message, my thumb hovering. I knew the right answer. Decline politely. End it before it began. But instead, I typed, "Sure, that sounds nice." The next day, we met at a small cafe. I told myself it was nothing, just two people having coffee. But when Derek walked in, flashing that easy smile, I knew I was lying to myself. We talked about everything: fitness, life, dreams. He listened like no one had in years. He laughed at my jokes, nodded as if my words mattered. For the first time in forever, I felt seen. As we left, his hand brushed my arm, lingering a moment too long. "I enjoy spending time with you, Ashley," he said softly. That night, lying in bed beside Matt, the weight of what I was doing crushed me. I told myself it was harmless, just friendship. But deep down, I knew it was more. I was slipping, and part of me didn't want to stop. The next time I saw Derek, his voice dropped low as he leaned closer. "You deserve to be happy, Ashley. Don't settle for less." Those words echoed long after I left the gym. For the first time in years, I felt something awaken inside Medea: freedom, and the terrifying thrill of the unknown. I whispered to myself that I could stop any time, but in my heart, I wasn't sure I wanted to. That afternoon, the gray skies matched my mood. The drizzle outside mirrored the storm in my chest. The kids were at school, Matt away on a business trip. The house to quiet, another text lit up my phone. "Derek, got time for coffee again? Or maybe something stronger?" It was harmless on the surface, but I knew better. I should have ignored it, deleted it, blocked his number. Instead, I typed, "I could use a break." His reply came instantly in address to a small wine bar downtown. By the time I arrived, the drizzle had turned to steady rain. I hesitated at the door, telling myself I could still turn back. But then I saw him waiting by the window with that confident smile. The bar was dim, quiet, a place where people could disappear into shadows. Derek stood as I approached, brushing my arm lightly. "You made it," he said warmly. "I almost didn't," I admitted. Sliding into the seat across from him, he ordered a bottle of wine. The world outside faded as he made me feel like the most important person in the room. Somewhere between the first and second glass, his voice softened. "You're incredible, Ashley. Any man would be lucky to have you. I don't know how your husband doesn't see it." His words hit me like a blow. "Matt does see it," I said quickly, more to convince myself than him. Derek's smile was knowing. "Does he, though? Because if I were him, I'd never let you feel unappreciated." I wanted to argue, but my heart betrayed me. Deep down, I knew he wasn't entirely wrong. I had felt invisible for years. By the time we finished the bottle, I was lightheaded not from the wine, but from the way he looked at me. "Let me drive you home," Derek offered as the rain poured outside. "I can drive myself," I whispered, but my voice lacked conviction. "Come on, Ashley. It's pouring. My car's right here." Before I could think, was in the passenger seat of his sleek black SUV, my heart hammering. The ride was silent, rain tapping against the windows. When he pulled into my driveway, Derek turned to me, his voice soft. "You deserve more than this." His hand brushed mine. I should have opened the door. I should have walked away. But instead, I leaned in. Our lips met in a kiss that stole my breath. Electric and consuming. I've wanted to do that since the day I met you, he whispered when we finally pulled apart. My mind spun with guilt, but my heart screamed for more. "Come inside," I heard myself say, barely above a whisper. We didn't make it past the living room. The storm outside raged as if it understood the one burning inside me. Afterward, lying in Derek's arms, the weight of my choices crushed me. A wave of nasa not from him but from myself flooded over me. "I should go," he said gently. I nodded, unable to speak. When the door closed behind him, I sat in silence, staring at it. Wondering how I had let things go so far, I told myself it was a mistake, a moment of weakness, that it would never happen again. But even as I whispered the lie, I wasn't sure I believed it. The next morning, the house felt hollow. The ticking clock in the kitchen was deafening. Matt was still away. The kids were at school, and I was left with only my thoughts. I replayed every detail of the night before until the guilt became unbearable. I didn't recognize the woman staring back at me in the mirror. I told myself I'd never let it happen again. But Derek's touch, his kiss. His words haunted me like a ghost I couldn't escape by the time Matt called that evening. I already knew life would never be the same. I never thought one small moment of weakness could unravel my entire life. As I sit by my kitchen window, watching the snowflakes drift down, I can't help but replay it in my mind. It wasn't some wild affair or a whirlwind romance I couldn't resist. No, it started with a stupid question. One I wish I had ignored. Does size really matter? My name is Ashley. I'm 35 years old, a stay-at-home mom living in a quiet suburb just outside Columbus, Ohio. For 12 years, I've been married to Matt, a man who checks every box. He's kind, hardworking, dependable. We've built a picture-perfect life. 2 wonderful kids. A golden retriever named Max, and a home anyone would envy. On the surface, everything looked perfect. But beneath that shine, cracks had started to form. Nothing dramatic, just the kind of wear and tear long marriages often suffer. Our days had become routine. Matt buried in work. Me juggling the kids, the house, and everything else. Intimacy was still there, but faint. More like quiet companionship than fiery passion. One Friday, I was sitting in a coffee shop with my 2 best friends, Rachel and Lisa. We were laughing, sharing stories, when Rachel, always the blunt one, suddenly smirked and asked, "Be honest, ladies. Do you think size matters?" Lisa nearly spilled her latte. "What are you talking about?" "You and Dan." Rachel waved her off. No, I mean in general. Does it really make a difference?" We all laughed it away, but the question stuck with me. That night, I looked at Matt, exhausted, slouched on the couch, scrolling through his phone. And for the first time in years, I caught myself wondering, is there something I'm missing? Weeks later, I decided to shake up my routine and joined a new gym. That's where I met him, Derek, the instructor. He was everything Matt wasn't: outgoing, flirtatious, built like a Greek god. At first, it was harmless. I told myself it was just nice to feel noticed again. Derek would toss me compliments during workouts, nothing too obvious, but enough to make me blush. Soon, I found myself looking forward to my gym sessions, not for the exercise, but for him. Then came the day he offered me a private session. "You've got real potential, Ashley," he said with that dazzling smile. "You just need someone to push you a little harder." I laughed it off. pretending I didn't hear the double meaning behind his words. But inside, something stirred a dangerous mix of excitement and fear. That night, lying in bed next to Matt, I couldn't stop thinking about Derek. I hated myself for it. Matt was a good man. He didn't deserve this. But the question wouldn't leave my mind. Does size really matter? Day after day, I told myself I was going to the gym for me, for my health, for my sanity. But deep down, I knew the truth. It wasn't the workouts pulling me there. It was him. The way Derek carried himself, the way his eyes lingered on me like I was the only woman in the room. He made me feel alive again, a feeling I hadn't tasted in years. Matt used to make me feel that way. But time and routine had stolen that magic from us. One afternoon, after a workout, I was heading out when Derek called after me. His voice smooth, confident. "Ashley, wait up." And in that single moment, I felt the ground shift beneath me, inviting. That's the only word I could use to describe Derek's smile as my heart raced faster. He leaned casually against the wall, his voice low and confident. "You're doing great, Ashley, but I think you've hit a plateau. If you're up for it, I could design a more intense program just for you. One-on-one sessions, maybe even after hours, when it's quieter." I hesitated. We both knew he wasn't just talking about workouts. And yet, instead of saying no, I found myself nodding. Sure. That sounds helpful. That night, I couldn't shake the memory of his words or the way he looked at me. I told myself I was overthinking, that it was innocent. But deep down, I knew I was walking a dangerous line. The next week, our private sessions began. At first, everything was professional, his focus on my form, my posture, my technique. But little by little, the boundaries blurred. His hand lingered on my arm longer than necessary. He stood too close, his compliments shifting from fitness to something more personal. "You've got such natural strength." "Ashley," he said one evening, his voice softer now. "And you're beautiful. You know that, right?" I laughed nervously, brushing it off. But inside, his words lit something I hadn't felt in years. Matt used to tell me things like that now. He barely noticed at home. Life with Matt was as predictable as ever. He was tired, distracted, buried in work. I tried to reach for him, to spark something between us, but it felt like trying to hold smoke. I wanted to tell him how empty I was feeling, how invisible I had become. But the words stayed locked inside me. Then one evening, my phone buzzed. A text from Derek. "Derek, great work today. You're making amazing progress. Want to grab coffee sometime?" My treat. My thumb hovered over the screen. I knew the right answer was no. A polite decline. But instead, I typed, "Sure, that sounds nice." The next day, we met at a small cafe near the gym. I told myself it was harmless. Just coffee. But when Derek walked in, flashing that confident smile, I knew I was lying to myself. We talked about everything: fitness, life, dreams. He listened in a way that made me feel seen, hanging on to every word, laughing at my silly jokes. It was effortless, intoxicating. When we left, his hand brushed my arm. "Lingering just a moment too long. I enjoy spending time with you." "Ashley," he said softly. I didn't trust myself to reply, so I only smiled and walked away. But that night, lying beside Matt, the guilt pressed heavy on my chest. I told myself it was innocent, harmless, but deep down, I knew better. I was already slipping down a slope I wasn't sure I wanted to climb back up. The next time I saw Derek, his voice dropped low as he leaned closer. "You deserve to be happy, Ashley. Don't settle for less." Those words burned into me long after I left the gym. For the first time in years, I felt a flicker of something: desire, freedom, and the terrifying thrill of the unknown. I told myself I could stop any time, but in my heart, I wasn't sure I wanted to. That afternoon, gray skies and drizzle matched the storm inside me. The house was too quiet. Matt had left early for a business trip. The kids were at school, and I was alone with my thoughts. My phone buzzed again. "Derek, got time for coffee again? Or maybe something stronger?" It was an innocent message on the surface, but I knew what he was really asking. I should have ignored it. I should have deleted it. Instead, I typed back, I could use a break. His reply came almost instantly in address. A small wine bar downtown. By the time I got there, the drizzle had turned into steady rain. I stood at the door telling myself I could still turn back. But then I saw him waiting for me by the window, smiling like he'd known all along I would come. The bar was dim, quiet, almost secretive. Derek ordered a bottle of wine, and as we talked, the world outside disappeared. Somewhere between the first and second glass, his words cut deep. You're incredible, Ashley. Any man would be lucky to have you. I don't know how your husband doesn't see it. My heart clenched. Matt does see it, I said quickly, though the words sounded more like a plea to myself than the truth. Derek just smiled, his eyes sharp. Does he? Because if I were him, I'd never let you feel unappreciated. I wanted to argue, to defend my husband. But I couldn't, because deep down, Derek's words were slicing into the very wound I'd been hiding for years. By the time the bottle was empty, I was dizzy not from the wine, but from the way Kay was looking at me. Let me drive you home, he offered as the rain poured outside. I started to protest. I can drive myself. Come on, Ashley. It's pouring. My car's right here. Before I could think of another excuse, I was sliding into the passenger seat of his sleek black SUV. My heart thundered in my chest. The ride was silent except for the rain against the windows. When we pulled into my driveway, Derek turned to me, his voice low. You deserve more than this, Ashley. His hand brushed against mine. I should have pulled away. I should have gotten out. But instead, I leaned in. Our lips met in a kiss that was electric, shocking, consuming. For the first time in years, I felt alive. When we finally pulled apart, Derek whispered, I've wanted to do that since the day I met you. I couldn't speak. I knew it was wrong, but I didn't want it to stop. Come inside, I heard myself whisper. We didn't make it past the living room. The storm outside raged as if reflecting the one inside me. And afterward, lying in Derek's arms, the weight of what I'd done crashed down. The guilt was suffocating. I should go, he said gently. I only nodded. When the door closed behind him, I sat there staring into the silence. Wondering how I had let it come to this, I told myself it was just a mistake. A moment of weakness, that it would never happen again. But deep down, I wasn't sure I believed that. The next morning, the house was silent except for the ticking clock. Matt was still away. The kids were at school, and I was left alone with my thoughts. I replayed every moment of the night before until the guilt became unbearable. I didn't recognize the woman staring back at me in the mirror. I told myself I'd never let it happen again. But Derek's words, his touch, his kiss, they haunted me like a shadow I couldn't escape. By the time Matt called that evening, I already knew. My life would never be the same.